to Two Babies in a Business, a podcast about business, marriage, babies, life, and more. And today we are continuing our series on artificial intelligence and what it means for business, but more specifically for marketing. And today we are joined by my good friend Gunnar Hood with WSI Summit. And so Gunnar is here joining us today because he is, I think, probably one of the foremost experts on all things LinkedIn. Gunnar has, I've had the privilege of actually sitting in a couple of webinars and courses and things like that with Gunnar, and honestly, his knowledge of LinkedIn, to be honest with you, just blew my mind. Some of the things he does and some of his techniques and approaches are really, really cool and really innovative. So certainly, if you're looking for some help on LinkedIn, this is a guy to go to, and we'll provide his contact information in the show notes and at the end of this episode. So Gunnar, thank you for joining me.
Hey, thanks so much for inviting me, Peter. It's a pleasure to be here, and love the work that you guys do. So always fun to chat with a colleague about things going on in the world.
Absolutely, yeah. So today we're going to take a bit of a different angle. We've been talking about AI kind of from a broad perspective, you know, what businesses need to know, what it means for business, what it means for marketing kind of broadly. But I think today we're going to do a bit of a deep dive on AI and kind of what's happening in the world of AI, specifically in the field of in the application of LinkedIn, because that is an area where Gunnar spends a lot of his time. And I know that Gunnar mentioned to me, which got my interest, that he's, are you part of an AI kind of working group for LinkedIn, or kind of unpack that for me, help me understand what you're doing there?
Yeah, so I was invited to join in kind of, I guess you could call it a mastermind group on LinkedIn and AI, and it's made up of a number of, for lack of a better term, LinkedIn experts that are out there doing training and coaching in LinkedIn. And one of them is very much at the forefront of implementing AI tools and solutions as well. Mm-hmm. And so we get together on a bi-weekly basis and talk about, you know, how are we applying it? How are our clients utilizing it? Or what are we recommending our clients do, and specifically not do with AI as well? Because there are some things that, you know, you question, do they run against the terms and conditions of LinkedIn and present a risk of getting you banned from using LinkedIn? So we want to make sure people understand that too.
Interesting. Well, that sounds like a good place to start, because I guess I'll just say from experience that I don't think AI tools are new to LinkedIn. From what I can see, I've been pitched by, you know, LinkedIn professionals or people just trying to sell services in and around LinkedIn a lot through LinkedIn, actually. So I'm assuming that probably some of the things that some of those people are doing, maybe some of those things that fall outside, you know, the rules, but, you know, I don't know. So can you unpack that a little bit in terms of, you know, what are some of the, you know, some of the things that people should be kind of cautious about when thinking about AI for LinkedIn specifically?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's a distinction between automation tools and artificial intelligence tools. For years, there have been a number of companies that have been offering automation tools, which means we'll automate all your connection requests, we'll automate all your responses to people, and, you know, we'll even offload all of your contact information. And a number of those tools do violate the terms and conditions of LinkedIn. And specifically, what they're opposed to is any tool that scrapes their information and pulls it into a different source. And some of the automation tools that also automatically invite people can push you up against what are known as the commercial limits that LinkedIn establishes. And it also triggers their algorithm to say, hey, we're seeing different behavior here. So like if normally you invited 1 or 2 people a week to connect with you, and suddenly you're inviting 50 to 100 people a week, that's going to signal their algorithm to go, hey, something's different here, and this doesn't look like a human is doing it.
Right.
And those things can potentially get you banned from LinkedIn, or put in what we call LinkedIn jail for a period of time, and you have to plead your case to get back out. Yeah. So we're not fans of automation. And the reason behind that is this is a human-to-human network. It's about creating connections and relationships that can lead to business opportunities. But there are a lot of sales folks out there that just say, it's about the numbers. We just need more people. We need to pitch as much as we can. And that's really not creating relationships. So for that reason, and the fact that it violates terms and conditions, we're opposed to pure automation tools.
And so how does that differ? I guess you said there's sort of automation tools and AI tools. So can you help kind of unpack the AI tools now that are sort of around? And maybe, I guess, let's start with the ones that maybe kind of either violate the rules or sort of are close to the line. And then maybe we'll get after that to some of the ones that maybe are the promising ones.
There's been so many new tools developed just since November with the advent of Chat GPT. And the question is, how do you use them? And I don't even know if we fully understand which ones fully violate the terms and conditions. There are tools that have been around for a while, something like Magical, which is a text expander tool. And actually one of the investors in that tool is Reid Hoffman, who was the person who started LinkedIn. So there's kind of like an implied consent that, gosh, if he started it, he invested in this tool, it's probably okay. It doesn't scrape anything at this point, although they've introduced something that could be a little bit questionable. But for text expander, here's a potential use is if you do invite a number of people to connect with you, and you typically find yourself saying the same thing or something very similar on a repetitive basis, then like any text expander, you can create these templates, if you will, that allow you to start the conversation with that, but fine tune it to the individual. Those seem to be perfectly okay. Other tools that have come out more recently are more about commenting and posting. And, just as if whether you're doing anything online with a website or something else, we encourage you not to do it blindly and just let it speak for you, because it's AI. It doesn't fully understand that. But some of the tools for LinkedIn that use AI have the ability to, well, let me pause a second and say, here's why you would want to consider it. One of the biggest problems people tell me is, I don't know what to say. They understand it's important to engage with other people's posts, but they don't often know what to say. And they default to, hey, great post or something like that. And that really adds no value to you as the commenter or to the person who originally posted.
Right.
So AI can be a great tool for getting out of that stuck phase. And the tools that are available today will read the post that you're looking at and formulate a couple of choices for comments. And then you can even choose the tonality of the comment that you want. I want this to be humorous. I want this to be inquisitive, things along those lines. And that is where we say, don't just hit enter and send, but look at that and say, read it out loud to yourself. Is that how you would sound if you did this? And if not, then fine tune it to your voice. But what you're going to get is usually 2 or 3 sentences, which is far more meaningful, that references something that the original poster mentioned, which is complimenting them. And that helps get you better visibility overall. So I was using one tool called Ritio, WRITI.io. They have both a free version and a paid version. And it would typically give you 3 different prompt opportunities. Just recently, a new tool was introduced called Evy, EVYAI. It's a Chrome plugin. And it has been refined in terms of the prompts that it has been trained with in the background. And it gives perhaps better types of responses, but it only gives you one choice, but you can regenerate, but it gives you different options in terms of how you want to respond. And once it's created a response, you can enter in your own prompt to regenerate a response. And again, the whole point is it's not just plug and play, but get your brain unstuck if you find yourself constantly getting stuck. And these tools can then also be used to help create posts. So if you have a topic you want to write about, but you're not sure how to start it, they can be a great starting point to say, oh yeah, that's the great way to do it, and let you take off from there.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is that it's not necessarily that the tools themselves may kind of put you in LinkedIn jail or may get you banned from LinkedIn. It's sort of maybe how you use the tools potentially. If you're just sort of plugging in whatever the tool tells you to plug in consistently, that's maybe where you're kind of offside. Whereas if you're adding your human element into it and sort of your own touch and some personal, you're actually putting some human effort into it, that's probably where you're going to be safer. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, with the two tools that I mentioned, we don't see that it's necessarily scraping anything and exporting that for use in other tools.
Right.
So for those reasons, we feel that they're safer than some of the automation tools that have been out there.
Gotcha.
But you can never get LinkedIn to say with 100% accuracy, this violates the terms and conditions, this doesn't. So
Mm-hmm.
we always put the asterisk to say, use at your own risk.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that if you apply it in the right way, probably create less risk for you.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. Yeah, I actually listened to a great podcast yesterday on AI, and I really like the way the guest sort of put it in terms of, a lot of these tools are going to kind of change the game for people and maybe make people less original creators and more editors. And it's sort of this idea of it's a kind of a co-pilot. So to your point, it might be help. Hey, I don't know how to. I'm just not sure how to respond, or I can't get my brain working on this. So the tool can kind of get your thinking going. But then it's, when you add the human element and sort of put it together is really where the opportunity for the magic to happen. And it sounds like kind of that's what you're saying here as well.
Yeah, I mean, think about it in other aspects of life. If you've never played a particular sport, you're hesitant to go out there and do it. But if you have a friend or a coach that's there to help you do that, you start to build up some familiarity with it. You get to a point of proficiency or skill,
Yeah.
and you begin to do it on autopilot.
Yeah.
Well, AI can be the same thing because 98% of LinkedIn members, of which there's now 930 million, really don't engage with it. And
Yeah.
part of it is just that hesitation is, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I don't have the time. So if these tools can help improve that, everybody benefits because right now only 2% of the population are creating content.
Yeah.
So that's not a broad perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really glad you raised that because I think one of the things I tell people all the time is like, I don't think there's a better channel than LinkedIn to be consistently sort of posting and getting your voice out because a lot of other channels, I think the percentages are a lot higher of people who are active and posting. So do you have any, like you kind of said 2% on LinkedIn, do you have a sense in your mind or do you have any stats kind of on how I might be putting you on the spot about how that compares to some other social media channels or other channels out there?
It's certainly on the lower end of things. And like you mentioned, I flip that number and say, that's huge opportunity.
It is.
I mean, you can stand out and think of it as you're still kind of early stage on a platform because so few people are actually doing it or doing it well
Yeah.
that it does make it much easier for you to stand out if you have thought leadership you want to share with others.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a PR guy, we're really firm and strong on LinkedIn because we think that's a really just, I mean, again, you can opportunity to connect exactly with the target audience, the people you want to, reach out to. The tools on LinkedIn are amazing in terms of finding the right people that, match kind of who you want to be speaking to, connecting with those people. And I think your approach, Gunnar, is all about sort of that authentic engagement and responding thoughtfully, making sure that when you're responding, you're adding some value in terms of, all those types of things you just talked about. So, strategically, I think, a couple small little tips can really make you stand out on LinkedIn in a really big way and do some good things for you. So when it comes to AI, and as you're sort of obviously you're testing some tools that do some very specific things, are you incorporating kind of AI into your like first of all, maybe let's take a step back. When you work with a client on LinkedIn, is it start off with sort of a high level strategy? This is kind of how you want to position yourself. This is how you set up your account. And then do you do things like content calendars? Here's kind of some ideas on how to, think about putting content out. Here's ideas on how to, respond and engage. Is that sort of how you approach LinkedIn, first of all?
Yeah, generally when somebody hires us for coaching on LinkedIn, it's important for us to understand where are they? because everybody is at a different point of entry on LinkedIn. Some have had an account for years but never done anything.
Yeah.
Some are already well advanced using Sales Navigator for business development, and they have different needs. So it's important for us to kind of assess that and ask, what do you really want to accomplish on here?
Yeah.
Is it thought leadership? Is it, prospecting and business development? What are your goals? And then trying to narrow down those goals into actions or behaviors that they actually control. You and I can't control who accepts our connection requests and things like that, but we can control who we reach out to, how targeted we are with those things, and the messaging that we put out there that could attract people to us as opposed to repel them. And so those are things that we focus on. And then that does lead to a calendar for some people of activities going, here's topics. But before we even get to calendars, I think it puts a lot of pressure on people just starting out on LinkedIn to talk about even publishing content.
Mm-hmm.
We find it's much better, and it builds more confidence just getting them to comment on others' posts to start with, and figuring out whose posts are the right ones to comment on in the first place.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like that. So in that context of sort of coaching and working with a client on sort of improving their own LinkedIn performance and presence, are you now incorporating AI into that process and AI tools? Is that, like some of the tools you mentioned, would that be part of kind of what you would be recommending to people to help them get going?
Yeah, because I mentioned one of the other things that people always say they have a problem with is I don't have time.
Yeah.
So if these tools can help you be more efficient and effective in the same amount of time, then they make sense. So we introduce them.
Yeah.
We offer coaching around how to use them, but it's entirely up to the client as to whether or not they choose to use them.
Sure. Yeah, no, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. Interesting. And have you seen any, or are you working with any tools? I guess I'm sort of now, moving a little bit past sort of what I'd call kind of the basics, but getting more into the sort of analytics side of things. And are there any tools out there that you know of, or is there anything kind of any practices out there that now can look at some of the analytics on LinkedIn and kind of give you some advice, or sort of, work with you on here's how you can do more and better?
Yeah. I mean, like anything in life, if you don't measure it, it's hard to improve it.
Yeah.
And while LinkedIn's analytics are better than where they were a year ago, they're still not that great.
Yeah.
So there is another tool that I've been using for a couple of years. It's a paid tool called Shield. And it has the ability to pull a lot of that data. It's a Chrome extension of sorts. So again, it comes with the asterisk that use at your own risk. I've listened to 2 hours of podcasts with the founder who talks about why he doesn't violate the terms and conditions of LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of really highly followed individuals out there on LinkedIn who use this tool as well.
Okay.
So I feel like, it's pretty safe, but it really gives you great insight. And if you say, this is something I want to get really good at, that type of insight's valuable, because you can then take a look at the content that you post by type, whether it's a video content, it's a picture, an image content, it's a carousel, things like that. It flags all of these types of things, and it shows you in a table format what type of engagement you were getting. And ultimately, that's the goal, is engagement.
Right.
Because LinkedIn rewards conversations that happen.
Yeah.
And so if your content is inspiring comments, to a lesser extent likes, but especially comments, that's going to be meaningful in terms of your visibility and reach.
Yeah.
And this tool does a really good job of tracking that. It tracks the growth in your follower rate or your connection rate. It does a number of different things extremely well. I think it's about $220 a year or so.
Okay.
So that might put some people off, but for the people who are serious about, using LinkedIn, it is a really great tool for insights.
Yeah, nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that one. The other question I have is just regarding kind of, this is less about AI, more just about sort of LinkedIn strategy in general. And so again, I would just say that it seems to me like there's been an explosion of what I would almost call cold outreach on LinkedIn in terms of sales outreach, and I've used it myself quite effectively through a partner, I've seen it done. I've seen it work for me, but I kind of stopped doing it because I have this feeling like it's been overdone now, and I also see that there's a way to do it well and there's a way to do it very, very poorly. And most people, unfortunately, do it very, very poorly. And I feel like that's kind of, at least in my opinion, kind of soured the entire thing, right? Like, I think if you're doing it well and you're being meaningful and thoughtful and sort of doing it at the right pace, and you're actually adding value and contributing to the people you're trying to sell to, I think that's where it could be great. Whereas, I get requests sometimes where it's like, hey, I'm a, offshore digital marketing agency and I can help you. It's like, I don't even want to like accept your request because I know there's a sales pitch coming right after that type of thing. Right. So can you just kind of tell me from your kind of expert opinion, the best approach that you think works in terms of, I guess, what I would call a slower thought leadership approach, meaningful comment approach, that type of thing, versus a sort of a hard sell approach, direct hard sell approach?
Yeah, what you described, we label as connect and pitch.
Yeah.
And, oftentimes that occurs because somebody joins a sales organization and it's all numbers based.
Yeah.
They have high numbers that they're trying to achieve. And they found that even if they get a 0.5% response rate by, sending out all these messages, that meets their needs. It doesn't really, do that. It really is kind of offensive to a lot of people. And that's really another complaint I hear a lot is I get all this crap coming in my box. What do I do about it? So, if you think about it more in the analog world, we all used to do networking before COVID. Many people are doing that again. You wouldn't show up to a conference or a networking event and just go, here's my business card. We need to do business to everybody in the room. They'd kick you out.
Yeah.
It's there. You go there to connect with the right people and build relationships. And then those people may not be your prospect, but it's about who they know that they can introduce you to that has a need for what you do.
Yeah.
And LinkedIn just builds that at scale for you because once you're connected with somebody, you can then look at their connections and turn those into warm introductions as opposed to cold calls.
Right.
And that's going to, you don't need the same percentages to be successful with that approach that you need from a pure cold perspective.
Yeah.
So if I look at you, Peter, and I say, hey, Peter, my ideal client is this. And I go through and I look at your connections and I use the filters in LinkedIn to identify those people. I can come back to you, Peter, and say, hey, how well do you know Christina? How well do you know Jim? How well do you know Dave? And you go, hey, I know all three of them. Well, I plan to reach out to them. Is it okay if I tell them you said hello? Then I've got a conversation starter. Hey, Jim, I was having a conversation with Peter the other day when your name came up.
Yeah.
He not only did he say hello, but he suggested I should reach out and connect with you.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And so that's a much more welcoming approach to a lot of people because now there's a known connection between us.
Yeah.
And the multiplier is there. If you've got 2,000 connections in LinkedIn and each of them have 500 connections themselves, that's 1 million people you can connect with just through those 2,000 people.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do the huge numbers to try and find business. You just have to understand how to use the ones that you've got.
I love it. I love the example you gave. And I mean, I think we see that you call it connect and pitch. I'm gonna start using that, but it's also, we see that in email too. Like I just get more and more spam, spam and pitch, I guess we call it on the email side. And it's just like, I think people are so tired of it. And I think back to these automation tools, unfortunately, these tools have made this so easy. And it is really just scraping the bottom, right? And I always say to Christina, my wife, it's like, this has to work because these people keep doing it. Somebody must bite on this stuff, and it's just volume, right? You get 1% of people that can say yes, and that maybe will turn into a short-term contract. But I think the other thing is I don't think that you haven't done the work to build a relationship well enough so you might get a contract, but you probably didn't even, if that's your approach for selling, you probably didn't build a strong enough relationship and, enough kind of alignment on kind of needs and values and all those types of things to probably end up having a long-term relationship anyway. So, you're just going to have to pitch more and more and more. And sort of, to me, seems like an endless cycle.
And instead of pitching, recognize the fact that 95% of the people out there, even if they need to buy what you sell at some point, it's usually not right now.
Right.
So LinkedIn can be a great tool for the thought leadership component to stay visible to these people so that when that opportunity, like an estate planning lawyer, I don't have, you don't have any kids right now, but suddenly you have a kid, but you've been reading this stuff on LinkedIn from this estate planning attorney for years. And it's like, oh, that's a great reminder. I need to reach out to him.
Right.
I can't tell you how many clients have told me that they've had inbound messages from people that go, I've never engaged with your content, but, and I've been following you for years, but now this, and this is, I have a need for what you do. Yeah. So it's that repetition and ongoing visibility that creates and builds trust over time that leads to more business. And even if it's not them, it's the people that they can send to you as well.
Totally. Yeah, no, and I have a kind of a story about that too, because we did when COVID kind of happened, we got into hyper webinar mode just to be visible. And then obviously we were using LinkedIn and Christina, my wife, she's pretty strong in the tourism industry. A lot of her connections are tourism related. That's kind of her kind of niche in terms of her target audience. And so, a lot of people we were using LinkedIn also to, let people know that we're doing these webinars, and, we're inviting them, through the tools through LinkedIn. And I remember we had a client that ended up coming to us. And when I, basically said, hey, I got your proposal together, let's sit down and let's, connect on this proposal, and I can tell you kind of all about how we do things and this and that. And literally he said, no, just send me the proposal. I'm ready to sign. I've watched all your webinars. I've consumed all your content. I know what you guys are all about. Like, I'm feeling very comfortable. So no problem. So the tools and the content and all that stuff kind of did the sale for me, so that when it came to do the actual sale, he was just ready to go at that point. Right. So that really was powerful for me in terms of what you're saying and kind of how it works. Right. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think if I could get a couple takeaways from this conversation is, the tools are there, that they can kind of be your co-pilot, or they can help you. But certainly, don't rely on them completely. Make sure that you're sort of inserting yourself and your thoughtfulness, and these tools actually don't think. I think that's something people need to understand. As smart as they come across, they actually don't know how to think. And so they need you to actually step in and think. So I think that's a critical point. And I think a more critical point is, a channel like LinkedIn is a channel where it's really a one-to-one kind of connection, human engagement type of kind of platform, right? And so I think the more time you spend doing that, I guess I would conclude that with don't be a lazy marketer, don't be lazy, and sort of take the time to build it right, and you're going to reap the rewards. I think that would be my conclusions. I don't know if that sort of sums up what you kind of said.
Absolutely agree. And in fact, I think about it in terms of WSI and how we talk about embrace digital, but, stay human. So when we think about AI, we're kind of coining the phrase that says brainstorm with AI, humanize with WSI. And somebody can just replace WSI in their world with themselves. Yeah. But, use AI for brainstorming, but do humanize it.
Yeah, no, I love it. Perfect. Well, hey, thank you, Gunnar, for your time. Just before we conclude, if you don't mind, if somebody wants to get a hold of you to sort of engage you on help with LinkedIn, how would they do that?
So I'm the only Gunnar Hood on LinkedIn, so it's easy to find me. All right. And if that's even more difficult, they can just go gunnarlinkedin.com and it'll bring them to my profile.
Nice.
And I would say that's the best way to reach me. We've got a website and everything, which you can include, but the best way to find me is through LinkedIn.
I love it. Awesome.
And just mention that you heard me, you heard us here, so that I'll accept any connection that comes in from people who've watched this podcast.
I love it. Fantastic. Nice. Thank you, Gunnar. I really appreciate your time and all your insights.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate you having me.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for joining in for another episode of Two Babies in a Business. CIPR Communications is a public relations and digital marketing firm partnering with clients across North America to reach their brand reputation and lead generation goals. Follow us on social at CIPR Comms and check out our website, ciprcommunications.com, for more information. If you have questions or want to be part of a future podcast, reach out at media@ciprcommunications.com. I'm James Falls, CIPR's PR specialist, and I'm looking forward to our next episode. Subscribe on your Spotify or iTunes account so you don't miss the next one.